So we have a new version of Serum here. It's very shiny and awesome. And I want to take a look at it from the perspective of an MPE musician. So I've got my instrument here. And I'm not going to go really in depth. I think I'm just going to cover a couple new features that are really nice. And then I'll take you into some presets that I made. And that'll be about it. Now, this isn't going to be really a product review. If it were, the spoiler alert is Serum is awesome, and it always has been, and it only gets better with this new version. I do have one negative thing to say, though, which is when I go up here to the presets, there do not appear to be any MPE presets. And we didn't have any in the first version either, unless I just don't know how to look for them, but I don't see any. Which might give you the impression that this is not a synth for MPE, which would be very, very mistaken. So I'm going to go here and look at the credits, and if you are any of the people in these lists, or if you know any of the people in these lists, if you'd like to have some MPE presets in your next release, I'm available and I'm good at it. So that's what I did when I got Serum 2, is I just went through and made some presets, and they will be available in a link down below. They are free, but if you'd like to show your appreciation, I have a Buy Me a Coffee link down there, and you could also grab an album from Bandcamp or something like that. But there's no obligation. All right, let's get into this. First, I want to talk about two little tiny looking things that might not seem like a big deal, but they are if you're working with MPE. So first I'm going to go over to the modulation matrix. Now, you've always been able to adjust these curves for each of your modulators, but the new feature is you can just go in and draw a shape. So I can get the S curve that I've been very attached to lately, or whatever kind of shape you want. This is important because, at least in my opinion, you're going to get the most out of your MPE controller when your sounds are easy and fun to play and you don't have to hurt your fingers by jamming down really hard on the buttons or whatever you've got. So being able to adjust make a good response curve for each modulator helps a lot with that. And I go into that issue in excruciating detail in my episode 1 of MPE for Surge XT, if you care to know more. But this is a big deal to be able to do this easily. You used to be able to use multiple instances of a single modulation, and then you could combine different curves, different slopes of the same curve to get kind of the shape that you wanted, but it's just much easier now. And the second really big thing, we have 2 filters now, which is nice. It used to be just 1. The second filter is really handy if you're trying to do something like physical modeling, and your first filter is acting as a comb filter for that. Those sounds can get kind of shrill, so it's handy to have a second filter that can just gently roll off those shrieky frequencies. But there was a problem with physical modeling in the past in Serum, which is This comb filter wasn't really great at responding. It was a little slow on the pitch tracking. Of course, it's not going to do it right now. But we have a new version of the comb filter, which tracks much faster. I might have overworked this sound and reduced the amount that you can hear that difference, but it is a big difference. The new comb filter is much better for that. And while I'm here, this is my first physical modeling patch with Serum. And this is included in the presets below, so you can go grab it. I'm really happy with this. I think this worked great. Cellos are difficult to accomplish with synthesis, but this one I think is working really well for me. And while I'm looking at this patch, we can look at a couple more of our new features, which are we have new kinds of oscillators now. It used to be we just had wavetables, and Serum is great at wavetables. And I was actually a little skeptical that these new oscillators were going to be much use for MPE. We have multi-sample, sample, granular, and spectral. Spectral is the most interesting to me. That's one that I haven't seen in a lot of synths before, and we'll be talking about that in a little bit. For now, in this one, I'm using the sample and the granular. And let me just focus on the sample for a second. I'm going to turn off the filter and turn off the granular. And our physical modeling synth without the comb filter sounds something like. So this is a sample of a violin bow scraping on my desk. And I'm using that as the exciter for the comb filter to make physical modeling work. And this was an option we sort of didn't have before. We could have maybe done it with the noise, but we have more options with using a sample. Now I had this envelope on it because I'm only using that for the attack of the sound on this one. And for the sustain, I'm using the granular oscillator. After playing with it for like 2 or 3 minutes, I was very skeptical that the granular was going to be much use for MPE. The benefits of granular synthesis are kind of in its randomness and unpredictability, and you can get some really cool pad sounds and shrieky string sections and lots of cool things with that. But as an MPE player, I really want the sound to be very responsive to what I'm doing, and the granular is just going to sort of go off and do its own thing, it feels like. So when you're playing with the granular as your primary oscillator, in my limited experience at least, it's much like trying to drive a car when your brakes aren't working or trying to drive it from the back seat. It's not great. But I'm using this factory noise loop as the basis for the grains. And this is a nice bowing sound. It's less scrapey than the sample that I'm using. But it's not very tonal, so it's not going to resonate in the wrong place and mess up the comb filter. So that's working pretty nicely. I'm going to turn the comb back on, or the sample back on, and just note a couple other things. If I right click on the oscillator, I have disabled pitch tracking for this one. And I am pitch tracking for this one, and I can get away with it because it's a noisy sound. Generally, you don't want to pitch track when you're going into a comb filter, but you can get cool effects with this sometimes. And this one just seemed to be working out, so I left it like that. So let's get back to the sound. Another really cool new thing we have is new effects in the effects section. And one of them is Convolve, which I think is great. I love that there is a synth now that I have with a built-in convolution. So I'm using an impulse from an actual cello to get the body of the cello sound. And if I disable this, it's a little subtle, but you can, there's definite cello-ish resonance that we wouldn't be getting otherwise. And it's kind of particularly resonant in the range where a cello would be, which is cool. And we have some nice bass tones. So I'm very happy with that. And I've got a variation on this. What did I call this? These names might change before I make you the zip file. This one's Ancient String. And we'll take a quick look at what we're doing in the matrix here. I'm using the pressure on the little instrument to modulate the filter 1 drive. So that's going to make the comb filter a little bit louder. And it's also modulating the filter 2 frequency. Filter 2 is a low pass, so that's just shaving off the high end when I play softly. Now let's go look at another sound. I had to do a duduk because everyone loves the duduk. For this one, I tried to do it with the Spectral oscillator. And Spectral, as I mentioned, is very new to me. I think I had one other synth, the Isotope Iris, that does something like this. And I used it for maybe 20 minutes. And I probably didn't give it as much of a chance as it deserved. I'll get back to it someday. So if anyone can explain to me how Spectral works, that would be great. It kind of seems like it's a wavetable, except it has inharmonic frequencies in it. So it's not just using a single cycle. I think it's using a little loop of cycles so that you can get noise and other inharmonic tones in there, which is very cool. It's a little tricky to use though, because you need a longer sample to work with. And I found that it works best if your sample is really even, because if there are any pitch fluctuations in here, those are going to show up and interfere with your sound. And it's going to be, again, driving the car without the brakes as far as MPE is concerned. So you want a very even waveform in here. And you can do these things. You can cut out lower frequencies that you don't want or higher frequencies that you don't want. There's a dedicated filter in this guy that you can draw yourself, and you can adjust the cutoff separately. And so what I tried to do was I sampled my duduk. And because I don't have multiple waves in this wavetable, I use 2 oscillators because I need 2 points in my wavetable for morphing on most sounds. So I just use 2 different loops here, one in each oscillator. So one I'm playing the duduk kind of quietly, and the other one I'm playing it really loud, which affects the tone. And I'm just using my y-axis to fade between these 2. And let's see how that sounds. So I see a lot of potential with this oscillator. It's certainly going to be great if you're making like ambient pads, and this also goes for the granular and the samples too, for that matter. If you're making big fat pads that don't really depend on your expression, these things are going to be great. But I think it's going to take some work for me to find the best way to use the Spectral. This sound is kind of good at first glance, maybe. But there are things I don't really love about it. I have to make a note of one thing. In both this and with the physical modeling with the comb filter, I found I had to be very careful with the tuning. That's why I have a tuner down here to listen to this. So this should be a C. Okay, it is. But like, I don't know how it's detecting the pitch of your spectral wave, but it doesn't always seem to be doing that quite right. So I need to be careful to get it tuned properly. And the same was the case with the comb filter. And just because I didn't love this duduk, I went and made one with wavetables, which is my normal way of doing it. And I've also got, I have the duduk sample in here, but this is just the noise. I'm not playing any tones in here. So that's just going to sound like our breath noise that you get with the duduk. And this, again, the wavetable, I just have 2 waves in here, playing softly as I can, and pretty hard. So. So I think that's pretty nice. It's on par with my other duduk sounds that I've made, if not a little better. This one's a mono sound. I'm having a little trouble with this. Like, I got little clicks between the notes on mono sounds. This one's better than others. But I haven't quite figured out why that's happening. And on most of the mono sounds that have this clicking, it goes away when you play poly. Let's see what else I'm doing with the matrix here. Okay, so I'm mapping expression Z, MPE Z to macro 1 and Y to macro 2. And that's a handy thing to do because then you can put your curves in the modulation of the macro and then use that same curve for multiple things that you want to modulate. So in this case, and this would be the most common use of this, is I'm modulating both the frequency, the filter frequency, and the level of the oscillator with macro 1, which is the pressure. And the y-axis is just morphing the wavetable. I'm playing too shreddy. I want to be more sensitive with the duduk. But we need to move on. Okay, so here we have another wavetable, and this one has 3 waves in it. It has a wave sampled from the pick of the guitar, and one from just the sustain, and one from the tail. And the tail has that 3rd harmonic coming out really strong. And so what I do with the modulation matrix, let's go look at this. So I have it's not behaving. So I have this envelope that brings the wavetable back to the pick sound, and it's just a quick little thing. And then normally it'll be at the sustain. And if I go up on the y-axis, it will take me up to the tail sound with that extra harmonic. And the other thing I want to mention about this sound is in the effects. I modified a preset effect that they have over here, which was lead guitar. And they have a nice new, I believe this is completely new, distortion effect. And you can like stack amplifiers here. For just a much harsher sound. Funny. And that's cool. And also we can use the convolution so I get my Marshall impulse in here. So this is pretty much a full amp sim and effects rack going on here. And I might actually use this for real guitars because the Serum comes with also a effects version of the plugin that I've never looked at yet, but I'm going to because I think this might make a good guitar rig for me because the isotope trash I used to use doesn't work on my new computer. And I've been looking for a replacement that I don't have to pay for. And thanks to the lovely folks at Serum, I did not have to pay for Serum 2 because it's a free upgrade. I wanted to mention that again. That was very kind of them. This is a big enough upgrade that you could have asked for money and you didn't. So thank you. And I'm just going to look at one more, which is the glass jug in space. I'll probably rename that one before I give you this zip, so you'll have to find the new name because this is a bad name. I love the bass in this one. And so here I'm using Spectral and Granular again. And this is a sample of just this thing here. I found it on the street. I shouldn't touch it to my lips. Okay. And oh, I replaced that with Duduk noise. Why did I do that? That was probably a mistake. I'll have to fix that. Go back to Spectral and I just wanted to look at this one to show off the granular oscillator in isolation. I'm not going to take the time right now to explain how a granular synth works. That just doesn't, I like that and it's cool, but it doesn't feel like what I want it to feel like when I'm playing it. So I would probably use this kind of thing a lot, but just not as an instrument that I play with instrument. And there's also a little, I don't know if you can hear it, There's a little Geiger countery grinding ticks at the beginning. And I don't like those. I'd like to get rid of them, but I haven't figured out how yet. This one also kind of kills the CPU if you have too much density here. So that's something to be aware of. And I think this is another one, if I didn't mention it before, that you have to be careful with the tuning. Oh, this unison 5, I don't need that. So yeah, there are a lot of cool things you could do with that. Let's just try one factory wavetable and see what happens. Spatial, drone lost in space. That looks like fun. Okay, so it's a very cool update. I'm going to just go back and play the cello once more as I take my leave. And again, link to these presets is in the description, and I hope you enjoy them.